Hello and welcome back to A Drunk History of Middle-earth. This is a show where we take the legendarium created by J.R.R. Tolkien and have a good, simple, wholesome chat about it. Sometimes it's a drunk person, me, trying to explain stories or events, and sometimes it's breaking down the stories and concepts as if we're talking to a drunk person. I'm Chris, I'm an avid Tolkien nerd, I'm still learning and realising how much I actually don't know. And joining me is your co-host and my lovely wife Rebecca. Do you want to say hello?
Hello, I'm Rebecca, a complete novice to all things Tolkien and nerdy in general. Although now I've watched all 3 films, extended editions, and can now confirm that I have been converted to the religion headed by Elrond Tubbard.
Long may he live. Right.
Zoltan.
That's the intro sorted. Let's get into today's episode. Okay, hello Rebecca. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? I'm sat in my hoodie.
Yeah, it's gone.
Feeling very chilly.
It's gone cold today, hasn't it?
We've had every season this week.
We have. I went for a run this morning, and was freezing. Like I really regretted not taking gloves, even though it's April. But then when we took the kid to nursery, I didn't feel too bad, and now it's freezing again. So fuck knows. Such is life in England. Although I was reading an interesting discussion the other day, right? That the weather in the Shire is too good for it to be England. Someone was saying but then it got into a discussion about weather changes over time because it was like the third age versus we'd be in the seventh age. But it just made me want to live in the Shire. The older I get, the more I want to be a hobbit as opposed to anything else.
So where did they actually say it was?
Do you know what? I think it was still England, but it was really south of England. And I also saw someone had transposed a map of our world over Middle-earth. And I think Mordor would be in southern Italy somewhere, which is pretty... Anyway, we'll look at that separately. But how's your week been?
Good, yeah. Busy. Looking after a screechy child who seems to have gone to nursery as much as she's been off nursery. Yeah,
teething with back teeth is no joker.
Yeah. Sounds like she's got a smoker's cough.
Oh, yeah, it's terrible.
She's been on the pipe weed.
Yeah, she's been on that South Farthing. Oh, bless her. But can you remember what we discussed last episode? We get straight into it. So
Dwarves.
Yes, the reason I'm getting into it is because this is where it starts to take a bit of a turn in the level of detail ramps up a little bit.
Oh.
But you can deal with it. You can. You've done really well so far. But what can you remember from the last episode?
The dwarves were crafted by Owle. And he crafted them using his own hands, and he made 7 families almost of dwarves.
Yeah, he made the fathers, yeah.
But that's what I meant.
Yeah.
And for once, they didn't have stupid names. So they were the black beards and all that.
Like the stiff beards, the black locks, the broad beams, the long beards. They had pretty good names. If stupid names are not to your taste, you are going to hate elves because they've got crazy names. I've just finished reading, I told you, I finished it on the train yesterday, but I finished reading Beren and Luthien, and in that there's some elves, and they're 2 brothers, and they're called Celegorm and Curufin, and it's only after reading that, the tale of Beren and Luthien, which is amazing if anyone could pick up the book. It's done in verse as part of it, and it's fucking great. But yeah, elven names are fucked. And I was just this morning, as I was out for my run, I was like, Finrod, I've got Finrod, Felagund, Finwë, Finarfin, Fëanor. And I was like, I can't wait until we get to this Rebecca. She's going to freak the fuck out.
Yeah, all the alliteration.
But yeah, so if you haven't guessed from the title, in which case, it's amazing that you've ended up at the podcast without being able to read. Good on you. Today is about the awakening of the elves. So, quick note. I'm going to stop saying, unless I know for certain, I'm going to stop saying what we're doing the next episode because I'm making myself into a liar here. The reason we're not doing the Ents and Eagles this episode is to go over the origins of them isn't enough for one episode, right? But to do them justice, I couldn't bundle them as one episode together. Ents need their own episode. Eagles need their own episode. Everything else beginning with E probably needs its own episode. So we will in future cover the Eagles, and in the future we'll cover the Ents. But for now, we're going to continue the story of the Silmarillion. So if you've been listening to our lore dive so far, we started with the creation of the universe, all the way up to now, where we're going to go over how the Elves came to be, and we'll continue. And this will be a two-parter for certain about the Elves because, just the story itself. So without further ado, shall we jump into it?
Yeah.
Wicked.
And just listen to the previous episode about dwarves because that's literally all I can remember.
They didn't have stupid names.
They made 7 fathers.
Yes,
that's the right one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they got put to sleep so that the elves could come first.
Yes, I'm proud of you for saying that. Yes.
And Eru said that gave a choice and said, why have you created this? And kind of was like proud of his son almost because he was like, oh, that's cute that he's trying to mimic what I'm going to be doing. So I was like, right, I've given them not free will.
I've given them life.
I've given them life and like understanding, like they can do things of their own accord instead of relying on Owle. But they do need to go and have a little nap first.
Yes, they are the adopted children of Iluvatar. Hey, I'm proud of you for remembering all that. That's class. Good on you.
Do you see the break though? I needed you to like warm us up a bit.
Yeah, you need it. Maybe we should just do some warm-up trivia before we start recording next time. Maybe we do record it and it becomes part of the episode. So, if you want to know more about the dwarves, go back and listen to the last episode. It's just about the origins of the dwarves. I am not done with dwarves. I fucking love them. So, we are not done. But we pick up in this episode, Middle-earth is still dark. The Valinor is got light. It's got the trees and what have you. But this is still called the Days of Bliss. So Middle-earth is dark, and Valinor's got the trees lighting it. But because of the light of the Pelori Mountains, nobody in Middle-earth can see the light of the trees properly, right? Middle-earth exists in twilight, and the only light is the stars that Varda made at the beginning. When the lamps were lit before the trees, right? Yavanna had started things growing. Do you know it was called the Spring of Arda, where everything was good and the world was perfect? But now the lamps were destroyed. Melkor was causing havoc and spreading plague and sickness. So Yavanna would wander in Middle-earth, and she started putting things back to sleep. And as I mentioned in the last episode, this is a period of time known as the Sleep of Yavanna. So this is when she stops things growing. But some things had already grown. Like, Tolkien describes it as the great weeds in the sea, which makes me think, is it coral reefs? Is that what he's talking about?
Or seaweed?
Yeah, I was thinking, like, it'd be a weird thing to mention seaweed as the great weeds. But then again, Isildur drowns in the weeds of the River Anduin when he's escaping from the orcs, so maybe that's the thematic link. But anyway, and the oldest trees had already grown. And some beasts were old and strong, and I've put here that's probably those evil elephants that I hated so much. Oliphaunts, yeah. But Yavanna, some things had already grown, but Yavanna, for everything else, tried to stop things growing to protect them. And in the north, Melkor built his strength. He was delving under the mountains, and he was building out Autumnal, which is literally hell. So I'm strengthened in my belief in the position that it is hell, because in the Tale of Beren and Luthien, multiple times it's referred to as hell. Autumnal, as far as I'm concerned now, is hell. The things that Melkor had made were moving around and generally being evil, and it's described, and this is quite a creepy thing that I read. The woods that were asleep were haunted by these evil things, which is a pretty good image.
Lurking.
Yeah, but as a side note, right, it says they were asleep. So obviously they weren't growing.
Were they just hunting each other to survive?
Well, it was violent. Yeah,
survive without any.
No. So it was violence, wasn't it? It was violence, and so there'd be some things that Yavanna couldn't put to sleep because they'd already grown or whatever. But there'd be things that were hunting each other because it's violence. Again, it's violence and murder, and that doesn't mean they're all on the same side. They'd still hunt each other, and it'd be cruel, and it'd probably be sport for Melkor, right? But as a side note, even though it says the forests were asleep, and obviously they weren't growing, but I wonder, and it would make things creepier for me, but if like the leaves didn't rustle, could you imagine like walking through a forest and you realise it's silent and not the nice kind of nature quiet, but it's entirely devoid of sound, like the leaves aren't rustling? Like that would freak me the fuck out.
Yeah, because forests are quite alive, aren't they?
It's like white noise, yeah. They're living things. Fangorn especially, but we live in County Durham in England, right? And we live surrounded by lots of countryside, so it's very normal for us to go around. Everywhere we go, there's trees and greenery. Yeah, like there's owls in the back. We see a deer behind our house a few times. Like you don't have to go far for us to be in nature. Yeah, a heron was on someone's house. Yeah, that was crazy. But anyway, just that image of evil monsters stalking through completely silent forests was pretty, under starlight, was pretty creepy. But at this time, Melkor gathered the Balrogs to him in Autumnal, and the Balrogs were some of the first spirits that joined him during the Ainulindale, and they were described.
Traitors.
Yeah, well, they're described as spirits of fire, but their older name in Quenya is Valaraukar. So the Balrog is the Sindarin name, and Valaraukar is the Quenya.
The Vala Outcast.
Yeah, well,
Vala Aura.
yeah, maybe, yeah. But yeah, that's just a bit of philological trivia from Old Tollers over there, that the Sindarin and Quenya names are both given for them. Again, I say this so much, Balrogs deserve their own episode. Of course they do. But they are spirits that first fell to be with Melkor during the Ainulindale, as I mentioned, and they take on the form of fiery demons with whips of flame. There's some quite lively debate about whether or not they had wings, which has led to quite a few good memes. But the captain of the Balrogs is called Morgoth, and he is a bad motherfucker, and he is equal in terms of rank to Sauron. So him and Sauron are on the same level. They're both captains of Morgoth, but whereas Sauron puts his energies into deceit and order and like dominating and strategy and like ruling, Morgoth is just sorry. Is it shit? Hang on. Is it Morgoth?
Is that not the one?
No,
that
that's
was in the
fucking
film?
Melkor. No, Goth. Oh my god, fucking Gothmog. I'm calling myself a lore nerd. I was saying Morgoth, and I was like, no, that's Melkor's name. So sorry, scratch that.
Oh,
Gothmog. Yeah, I know.
I feel like I'm gonna turn into a Balrog because I'm gonna separate from you after you've taught me all this lore
Yeah.
and turn against you because you are losing it now.
Mm.
You can't even keep up with the names.
I can't. You're right. Apologies, everyone. Gothmog is the leader of the Balrogs, and he is Morgoth's captain. There is also a figure in the Third Age. Do you know in Return of the King? That really fucked up orc that looks like Harvey Weinstein at the Battle of Pelennor.
Yes.
He's
with
also
like half a ear.
Yeah. He's also called Gothmog.
Yes, I remember you saying.
Yeah, Balrogs are bad as fuck, right? And Gothmog is the baddest of baddest motherfuckers. And Gothmog eventually meets his end by being drowned in a fountain by an elf called Ecthelion. And Denethor, so in Return of the King again, Denethor, his dad's called Ecthelion. Not the same person, obviously, because one's an elf, one's a man. But Ecthelion is...
That's where he got his inspiration from. His
Yeah.
parents who named him.
So, like, Ecthelion's parents, like, these are old names. Like,
Yeah.
there's a Legolas in the First Age who is at the Fall of Gondolin, but it's not the same Legolas who is in, like, the Lord of the Rings. So, yeah, like, these names get reused because they have weight behind them. But, yeah, so anyway, the captain of the Balrogs is called Gothmog, and he's equal in rank to Sauron. And at this point, Melkor is spreading his influence south over Middle-earth, but he also has a fortress constructed near the sea on the northwest shores. It's called Angband, and its main purpose was to warn and to resist any assault from a man in the Valar. So he's building Autumnal, and he's got Angband being built, and Sauron becomes captain.
I'm not going to try to say that because it Sounds like a bit of a tongue twister.
Angband.
Angband.
Angband. In the beginning. In the beginning. But yeah, so Angband was captained by Sauron, who obviously would go on to become a much bigger deal later on. For now, is just kind of... Well, he's obviously still a cruel bastard. In the Tale of Beren and Luthien, he plays quite a big part as well, because he captures Beren and Finrod Felagund, who's an elf king, and tortures them, which is pretty fucked. But anyway, all of this takes place over the same roughly 10,500 years that we've discussed in previous episodes. So this one's for the hardcore nerds, so I don't... if you're going to fucking glaze over, now would be the time, right? This is for anybody.
Right, so I'll just have a chill, check my emails.
No, so I recently got a book called The Nature of Middle-earth, which I showed you when it came from World of Books, which
yes.
I've had a lot of books delivered recently. But one of the years of the trees in Valinor is equal to so many years of the sun, which is how we count time. However, Tolkien gave 3 possible values for the years of the sun to the years of the trees. So one value is that 1 year of the trees is equal to 9.5 of our years, which this seems to be the most common interpretation. 1 year of the trees has also been given as equal to 144 of our years, because elves use base 12 as a counting system, which we'll go into later. Or 1 year of the tree in Valinor is equal to 100 of our sun years. And all 3 of these are given at different points because the Legendarium evolved over time. The stories changed constantly. It's amazing, the more you read into it, that he ever fucking published anything, because he was constantly going back and redoing things, which just made it a nightmare.
So which one's right then?
Oh, goodness me.
No one knows.
Nobody really knows. Choose your interpretation, stick with it. I'm going to go with 9.5 years because it makes things...
It's
easy.
like dog years.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah, but it was a fuck long time. It was a fucking long time that this happened, right? And eventually, during this time, the Valar got together because we've talked before that Yavanna and Oromir were still going to Middle-earth. And they were, like Oromir was going hunting and Yavanna was, like, tending to plants and animals and that. And Yavanna spoke to them and said, look, we don't know when or where the children of Iluvatar are coming because Eru took the fucking vision away. But we know it's close, so we need to do something. Would you rather that they called Melkor Lord whilst Manwë sat upon Taniquetil? She's saying if we sit here, Melkor's going to take them, and we won't be able to do anything about it.
Yeah.
And then Tulkas jumped in and was like, fuck that, we've rested long enough, we need to take the fight to him. And then Manwë told another of the Valar we've not really talked about called Mandos to speak. And interesting fact here, I always thought his name was Mandos. It's not. His real name's Namo. But Mandos is just the name of his house. So it'd be like me being... It's where he lives, right? The halls of Mandos. So it'd be like me being called England. Like Chris England. So, but Mandos was a very quiet and very serious Valar. And he's the keeper of the House of the Dead. And when elves are killed or when people are killed, they are summoned to his halls. And it's said that he knows everything that will come to pass, except that which lies in the freedom of Iluvatar. So, have you ever seen that episode of It's Always Sunny where they're selling gas door to door?
Yes.
And Charlie cuts the brakes in the van and then jumps out the back. So, to Mandos, men are Charlie. Like, every time he thinks about men, it's just, wild card, bitches! Woo! So he generally doesn't like men, I think, for this, in my opinion, it's for this reason. But then Mandos spoke, only really speaks when Manwë asks him to, and Mandos then spoke the prophecy. Indeed, the children of Iluvatar would come soon, but not yet. He also said that they would wake in the darkness under the starlight of Varda, and to Varda they would always call at need. So this links back to the Lord of the Rings, when Galadriel gives Frodo the phial of light, like the starlight. It contains the light of Arendelle. And so, when Frodo's in Shelob's cave, he calls on Elbereth, which is Varda's name, because he had that phial from the elves. And so hearing this, Varda leaves the council, goes back to the top of Taniquetil, where she looks out at the stars. And then Varda begins the greatest work of all the Valar to that point. She took the silver dew that was fallen from Telperion, the silver tree?
Yeah.
So it was dripping like dew, and with that she made new stars. but she made them brighter so the elves would see them better. And don't worry, I'm not going to go into the names of the stars. They are given, but it's elvish madness, and it doesn't really have much to do with what we're going to talk about today.
Okay.
So I'm going to spare you from that. But she made a few. She made a few stars that were bright, and they were named. And as a big fuck you to Melkor, right in the north of the world, she put a big band of stars called the Valar Circa, which is the sickle of the Valar and the sign of doom. And mini fun fact here, mid-episode fun fact. These stars can be seen outside our house at night because it's the constellation that we know as the Big Dipper.
Ah.
So that's how the Big Dipper came to be.
But not really. Can we please just have a check of our brains right now? This isn't reality. This is lore by Tolkien.
This is a
I can't
history.
be taking the child outside and telling her that the Big Dipper was made by the Valar.
Well, I mean, on one hand, you're right. It is. It obviously. I don't know why I've got to point that out. It is fictional, obviously. But on the other hand, like Tolkien made an effort, or so you know, he refuted
so you
it.
could understand it, I suppose.
It's just it's a far English mythology. It's a far mythological past of England, right?
Yeah.
That's why England becomes Tol Eressëa, you know, like at some point, which is the point between the fairy, the fae, and the mortal realms, you know. But it evolved over time, and it is what we've got. It's said that even as Varda finished her labours in that hour, the children of Ilúvatar awoke in Cuiveanen, the Water of Awakening. And this place was, well, you can't even see it on the map we've got of Middle-earth, but right to the far east, there used to be a place called the Sea of Helcar, and on the eastern shore of the Sea of Helcar was a wild wood, and on that wild wood is where Cuiveanen was, and further east of that was Hildorian, where men would eventually wake, but they're not in the story yet. And when the children of Ilúvatar woke, they were silent, and the first thing that they saw was the stars. And since then, they've loved the stars and hold Varda above all other Valar, even Manwë. I've already mentioned where Cuiveanen, but the world, so it used to belong on the shore of the Sea of Helcar, but the world changed since then, and so it doesn't exist anymore, which is quite sad. The awakening, the Waters of Awakening. But because of where they first woke, the first sound the elves heard was the sound of water flowing, which is quite nice. And it says in the Silmarillion, it says like they heard water flowing over stone, so I don't know if that meant there was waterfalls there, which might be pretty cool, but either way, the first thing they saw was stars, and the first thing they heard was water. Now, we're going to get to some names and some maths, right? The first elf that awoke was called Imin, and next, or Emin, and next, Imin. So it was called Imin. I'm going to butcher the pronunciation because it's Elvish, and I'm not an elf. But it was called Imin, and next to him awoke Iminye, who would become his wife. Like me, I'm Chris, and if you were just called Christine, fucking perfect. But the second pair of elves to awake was Tata and his wife, Tatye. Third was Enel and his wife, Enelye. And they all walked together as 3 pairs, and eventually they found 6 pairs of elves, who Imin claimed as his own. Next, they found 9 pairs of elves, who Tata claimed. They walked again and found 12 pairs, which Enel claimed. So for those of you who are accountants, that's now 60 of them. And they spent a long time inventing poetry, music, and their own language, and they started to name things.
Surely it would make more sense if the first... it wasn't the first one to wake up. I'm thinking Imin is like technically the first to open his eyes.
Yeah, so you got to choose first.
But you only got 3 pairs.
See, you've stumbled onto something here.
Or are they the 3 best ones?
No, you've stumbled onto something here, and this is part of... So, do you know, we've always got that little dichotomy of tragedy and...
Yeah.
And so,
he didn't realise there was going to be a bigger gang.
Well, hang on then. Because eventually, and my very next part of my note, eventually they set off again, and Imin, the first awoken, was peeved that he had so few elves in his company, so he said, I'll pick last this time.
Right, okay.
They then came across 18 pairs of elves, who Tata claimed after Imin said, no, I'll just wait.
Yeah.
But these elves that were picked were tall and had dark hair, and eventually they become the Noldor, who caused quite a lot of issues later. One in particular and his 7 sons cause fucking madness throughout the First Age. That's one of these 7 sons. 2 of these 7 sons are Curufin and Celegorm. Just bastards. But anyway, after more language and music inventing, they carried on walking, and they found 24 pairs of elves. And again, Imin, being a greedy dick, said he'd wait, and Enel took them as his own.
Don't you dare say they come across 2 pairs next.
So from these elves, there came the Teleri. They're the sea elves, who would mostly come from. And one of these elves that awakens here is still alive in the Third Age in Middle-earth, and he's called Círdan the Shipwright. And he's the one who keeps the boats for everyone to go west at the end of the trilogy. And he's the one who gives Gandalf his ring. His ring of power. Gandalf, take my ring. It's very important to the I don't know why I said it like that. But he's the only elf that's got a beard. Obviously, she's not that good of a beard if he's getting Gandalf to take his ring. But
he's waited so long though.
Yeah, but so for these were the sea elves. So are you keeping up so far?
Yes. I'm just getting really bad imagery in my head now.
I know. I'm seeing Goatsy, but it's Gandalf. But now if you've been keeping up, all the mathematicians who listen, there's 144 elves together, right?
Okay.
And they talked and sang, and eventually they all had learned the same language. And Imin eventually took his 12 and set out to find more elves because he thought, well, what the fuck? I've been shortchanged here.
So they never came across any more elves?
No. So, that's a shame, but they never found any more elves. But because of how many were found and how they counted, elves now use base 12 as their counting system. And they don't have a word for any number bigger than 144. So they'd say like 144 plus 1.
Okay.
So there's no common word for it. And with these elves awake and speaking the same language and singing under the starlight, they were glad. But in the darkness, just out of sight, just behind cover, there was a presence aware of the elves. And Melkor knew they had come, and he did not care for it one bit. And that is where we're going to end the episodes for today. The elves have awoken. They found each other. Imin's went to look for others. But Melkor is the first of the Valar to be aware of them waking up. And how do you think that's going to turn out? Do you think he's going to welcome them with open arms? Do you think he's going to be
I'd like to
happy?
think he'll be like a little bitch. And he's hidden away and not really... He's just been, being naughty behind the scenes, kind of just doing what he wants with no repercussions. So I would kind of hope that he just bitches around to himself, but I'm sure he'll probably do something he shouldn't do.
Yeah, unfortunately not, because he sends evil spirits and spies to waylay the elves, and what happens is any elf who strays beyond the starlight, beyond the firelight, or beyond sight
gets a snicker snacked.
Well, no, they get taken, and that's Melkor twists and perverts them into the race of orcs.
Ah, yeah.
So that's where orcs come from, is because Melkor can't create, so he can only twist. So it's through torture and sorcery and stuff. And because of this, he's called the Huntsman, and they fear him. So when Oromir eventually does find the elves, a lot of them run away in terror because they think it's Melkor.
Right.
Because they start to have the stories of the fear of the dark, essentially. That they're scared of the dark because what's in it is Melkor's spies and what have you. But I thought I'd cut that short this episode. One, because we got a fairly long fun fact, but partly because it's quite a lot to take in straight away. So
did they all walk together and they still stayed together as a big group, even though the factions were like under the first 3 that awoke? Yeah, they were pretty much like loosely so they were just spread around. It was just like a community. Yeah, it was like but it was like I'm part of this family. Like okay. It's like that because the Noldor and the Teleri
eventually.
So Imin only had
Imin.
Imin only had 3 pairs of elves in the end. Him and his wife had 3 pairs.
It says that Imin took 12 elves with him, so 2, 4, 6. That would only be 8.
But I thought you said 3 in the beginning.
Yeah, so maybe. Oh, I think other elves join him.
Okay.
Like to look for more elves. Oh, that was it. Right. No, sorry, I missed that part of my notes, but it's coming back to me now. So Imin said to the rest of the elves, like, I'm going to go and look for others, but a lot of the elves, and you'll see this gets worse, much worse by the third aid. They're either content or too weary, and they're just like, no, we're fine, we're happy, we're learning, we're singing, we're naming things, because that's a big part of what the elves did, was that they thought they were the first people to wake up. They had no idea, so they started to name things and they started to make their own language. So a lot of them were happy and content just doing that. And that's...
What a weird thing to be content doing. How boring.
I know, but arguably it's better than taking SSRIs every day and being so anxious sometimes we can't get out of fucking bed and we need short form content on
Excuse
YouTube.
Me.
Like, I would love, right?
Give me credit. I do get out of bed.
I'm not even talking about you, I'm talking about me. Oh man. Mental health. I'd be honestly, love having a life simple enough that I could just lay by the waters of awakening and just...
You would not.
Just do what our kid does and just go,
you
car,
would not.
cloud. I want to go off grid, me.
No, you do not.
You
are too driven for that sort of stuff.
But I'd be like,
Even I need more.
What if I was like,
simplicity.
what if I was a driven elf and I was like, I'm going to name every blade of fucking grass?
Well, you go do that. As long as it brings in the dollar.
Oh, thank you. Lovely. Gender equality at work there, folks. Have you heard that one? Right. Are you ready for this week's fun fact?
Yes.
And I was pretty stoked about this, right? So, J.R.R. Tolkien was a philologist. Thanks, everyone. See you next day. No.
Every week you tell us that.
I know. I don't know why. I love saying the word.
Philologist.
Well, funny enough, I was listening to a podcast yesterday. It was called like The Art of Law. It's just this new podcast. It's just 3 American lads, and they'd watched The Fellowship of the Ring, and one of them was seeing it for the first time, so it was similar. So I thought, I'll give this a listen. And they couldn't remember the words, so I was sat on the train listening, and they couldn't remember the word for what Tolkien was, and I was like, philologist, it's a fucking philologist!
You didn't shout that in the carriage, did you?
No, but I'd messaged the lad on Reddit, so I was tempted to say it there, but then I thought, like, it's obviously not the point of their podcast to talk about the law that much, it's just mainly about the film.
Yeah.
Because they've got an episode on Harry Potter as well that I'm going to listen to. But anyway, that's by the by, that's just me being involved with other smaller podcasts that I just started out. Back to the fun fact. Tolkien was a philologist, that's not the fun fact. But... the languages used in the Lord of the Rings goes deeper than you'd imagine. You might not be aware of this, and this for anyone who's not aware, I say fun fact every week, but it's actually just a package of fun facts. The Lord of the Rings book is presented in the book as a real historical manuscript that Tolkien has translated into English, and it's not a story. The book Lord of the Rings is written by, in universe, right? The book The Lord of the Rings is written by Frodo and Samwise and Bilbo as an account of the finding of the One Ring and the subsequent War of the Ring. It's a historical document, right? Yeah. So that's how the book is framed. That's why in the films, that's what Bilbo's writing at the beginning.
Yeah.
He's writing There and Back Again, which is The Hobbit. But the language that Tolkien translated, I'm using that with quotes, the book from, is its own language that he made up, and it's called Westron. And this is what the characters are actually speaking in the book. So every time, every time they're talking about Bag End or Orthanc or something like that, they're speaking Westron, and we're just hearing the English translation of it.
Okay.
So I've got a couple of examples here for you. Samwise Gamgee, that's his English name. That's the English translation of his name, because Samwise just means like dodder. It means like idiot or doddering fool or something. The Westron, i.e. the real version of his name, is Banazir Galpsi, and Merry Brandybuck, his name is Kalimak Brandagamba.
Sorry for the silence.
You're just staring at me.
I hope you're not you're not doing an ultimate quiz at the end of all these podcasts, and like this is going to be in the big exam at the end.
It might
Because
be.
I can't even remember what you've just said.
Oh, what the fuck?
Galas haven't...
No, you don't need to... No, I'm just giving you examples. You don't need to remember Banazir Galpsy. I mean, I'm looking at my notes, so that's the only reason I can fucking remember it. But the fun fact is that The Lord of the Rings is a historical document that's been translated into English.
Yeah.
From a language...
Westron.
Restaurant.
Try not to say
Which wristwatches are Swiss
Westeros,
wristwatches? Yeah.
Westeron.
But it goes deeper than that as well, because we've got a few languages that Tolkien. The two he did.
How many did he write overall then?
Well, the two he did the most was Quenya and Sindarin, the Elvish languages. Those are pretty much they're very, very fleshed out to the point where there's like Reddit communities where people practice their Tengwa, which is the written form of one of them. Like, do you know, like the writing you see on the ring and stuff like that? People write that, or write Elvish. But then there's the Black Speech of Mordor. But also Tolkien has Westron, which is like the common tongue of Middle-earth. But that common tongue even has do you know like how English is a mutt language of like Latin and French and all other kinds of shit? Westron is kind of like Italian and Latin in that it even has a mother tongue that was spoken in Numenor. And he mapped out bits of that language as well. So
where did he get all this time from?
Well, he was writing for like 60 years. You know what I mean? Like, but he was a philologist. Like this, how many times have I said in our previous episodes that it said that Tolkien wrote the languages, then had to write stories for them to go and play in, like. And now we're seeing week by week just how I say that in jest, but it's actually turning out to be pretty fucking true. Like. It just blows my mind.
It just sounds like it could be real because it's that thorough.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, so less of a fun fact, more of a you're looking at me like I've just upset your reality fact.
I feel like I need some time to decompress.
Yeah. Right. Well, do you want an extra mini bonus fun fact?
Can you do like a nice one, please?
A nice one, right? In the tale of Sauron in the original writings, in the tale of Beren and Luthien. Was replaced. Would replace a character called Tevildo, the Lord of Cats, and Tevildo was a giant cat with a magic necklace that served Morgoth, and he had hundreds of house cats in his fortress of Angmandi, which would become Angband, and a giant dog called Huan chases Tevildo up a tree and won't let him down unless he gives Luthien the magic necklace. So that she can go and free Beren from the dungeons where he's being kept. And then in later writings, Tevildo was replaced entirely by Thu, the sorcerer, who was much closer to what we know as Sauron. And then in the final version, Sauron is the one who captures Beren at Angband. But so at one point in the Tolkien Legendarium,
he was a big fan of cats.
There was a giant evil talking cat called Tevildo, Lord of Cats or Prince of Cats. But he
was a crazy cat lady.
I wondered if he didn't like cats, because then you've got Queen Beruthiel eventually, who had the Dulux colour card of spy cats.
You just love a good cat fact, don't you?
Do. Yeah, you are now subscribed to Cat Facts in Tolkien.
It's a bit of a long way to promote your new podcast about cats.
Cat Facts. Yeah, does that help you digest the bigger fun fact?
That makes me feel better. I'm imagining just a giant. It has to be a black cat.
I think it was actually, yeah.
A giant black cat with a blingy necklace.
Yeah, and Huan is a wolfhound, so it's like a giant, like shaggy grey dog, which is pretty cool. But I think with the look Beck has given me, we should probably wrap up. So. Do you have anything from this episode that you want to bring back up that you didn't understand, or any issues with it?
I don't think so. Apart from just that, isn't it interesting how they pick the pairs of elves through numbers instead of qualities? So, like, I want to call him Imam all the time.
The Imam. Mashallah.
Could potentially have, like, the best stock. But he's just like, crap amount of numbers. But he could have a tech genius. Mm-hmm. He could have Van Gogh
he could have like a great variety of people, whereas the other elves who have the most amount of people could have like the dross, the bottom of the barrel type elves that are lazy. Like you've said, a lot of them just were chilling, just like chilling, laid back, door.
Yeah, fair dude. Well, now that you've said it, though, now that you've...
Do you know what I mean? That's what they sound like, that they're just monging about, going, stick.
Well, no, they're also inventing music and poetry as well. But I'd love to hear this
But you didn't hear the music or poetry. We don't know what they were making.
Well,
they could have just been banging spoons on...
Well, how does any music start? But I want to hear more about this tech elf. I'd love, like, you've just got some fucking lunatic elf who's just, like, muttering to himself, and they're like, Kierdando, what do your elf eyes see? And he goes, far off in the 7th age, there will be a great threat. It's called ransomware.
Well, it's like in... Is it Omens where...
Oh, Good Omens,
yeah. Where there's the revelations... Oh, it's like the prophecies.
The really specific prophecies, yeah. And it's like, buy Apple stocks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd love that, the idea of like... Well, Tolkien didn't really like technology. He was called a Neo-Luddite. But I'd love that if there's just one elf who's completely fucking useless throughout the 1st, 2nd and 3rd age because he's just like, in 2017 the NHS will come under attack after having an outdated operating system. I know not what any of these words mean. The Valar send them. Like just a cybersecurity elf.
But do you know what I mean? Like he might.
There is a greater threat than Sauron. It's called AI.
Would you rather have quality or quantity?
Yeah.
That is the ultimate argument.
Yeah, but you know, it is what it is. I'll see if there's any rationale as to that, but I think Tolkien just wanted to get the fucking maths in, to be honest, of the base 12 counting system.
And I suppose as well, these are like the founders, the original ones. So you've got to think of them almost as cavemen.
Yeah, well, yeah, they're the first children of Iluvatar
to
awaken.
They don't have technology; they have to make it.
It
doesn't mean necessarily that they're very intelligent.
Yeah, but it is said that elves are wiser in the 3rd age, but they're still more beautiful. Like they're stronger when they wake up, like in the 1st age, but their beauty, like all of their qualities diminish except their beauty. So. You know, maybe it is just you need a waking up period. But we'll go over it more next week because the Valar need to find out that the elves are awake, and then we'll see what they do. Because it does
stop the hunting.
Well, it speeds up plans somewhat. So I hope you enjoyed listening. I'm going to say goodbye from me, and we'll catch you next week where we'll continue the awakening of the elves. But then the week after, I won't tell you what we're doing because I don't know yet. So yes, goodbye from me. Have a good day wherever you are.
And goodbye from Becca.
All right.
And have a nice week.
And that's it.